Discover the touching moment that transformed a billionaire when he came across a hidden bracelet. David Malone, Silicon Valley's relentless titan, stood in the attic of his childhood home, surrounded by dusty memories and echoes of a life he had abandoned for wealth. The rain poured outside, muffling the world beyond. As he rifled through old boxes, the weight of success felt heavier on his shoulders. That ceaseless need for more gnawed at him. With each fading box he opened, he could hear, almost like a whisper, his mother's voice reminding him of the sacrifices she made working 2 jobs. Yet, those voices grew quieter, lost in the hum of tech conferences and networking events where he was heralded as a genius. His grim search took a sharp turn when he discovered a hidden velvet box, a relic shrouded in mystery. Inside lay a delicate bracelet, the metal glinting dully in the dim attic light, engraved with the words, "Honor thy family." He froze, a wave of nostalgia crashing over him. It was his grandmother's, an immigrant who embodied grit and resilience. As he held it, the rich history of his lineage surged back. The countless nights his grandmother spent preparing meals for those who had little, her small kitchen transformed into a haven amid prejudice. The bracelet felt like a lead weight in his hands, connecting him to those he had neglected so ruthlessly in his climb to the top. These pieces of his past surrounded him now, pressing down with an uncomfortable familiarity. Memories flooded his consciousness. Chaotic family dinners filled with laughter and poignant life lessons, often punctuated by stark financial discussions. The realization hit him like a brick. Those moments were easily eclipsed by late-night meetings and endless emails, yet they were the foundation of who he had been. Instead, he had become a stranger to the very family that had shaped him. The relentless pursuit of success twisted his ambition into a shadow of its true self. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As he stared at the bracelet, David's heart raced with conflicting emotions. Guilt clawed at him, mingling with an unsettling determination to bridge the gap he'd created. But what awaited him out there? He thought of his estranged brother, a man who once looked up to him and now lived an unfulfilled life, burdened by silent resentment. And there was his cousin, struggling against the tide of debt and unfulfilled dreams, their family connection nearly severed by indifference. The stakes were high. Stepping into their world meant confronting the stark contrasts between their lives and his shimmering empire. In the tech corridors where he thrived, he'd always associated success with power. Could he risk sacrificing that power for the fragile threads of family? The fear of his mentor, a man who built him up while harboring darker secrets, loomed large. Their partnership had become a battleground for ambition, and with each step forward, David felt the tightening grip of loyalty and betrayal. Would he let go of his past before it consumed him completely? As the rain lashed at the windows, David clutched the bracelet tightly, every ounce of ambition clashing violently with the haunting echoes of home. Would he dare to realign his path? Or would he slip further into the depths of a world that soured the very legacy he sought to uphold? The bracelet's engraving burned in his mind, and the urgency to act intensified. His family's love and resilience swirled around him, but the question remained, would he choose wealth or connection? As storms raged outside, a different tempest brewed within him, leaving the answer tantalizingly out of reach. David stood in the attic, the rain a relentless backdrop as it struck the windowpanes like the ticking of a clock, urging him to make a decision. The bracelet seemed to pulse in his hand, its engraved message resonating with an increasingly loud urgency. Honor thy family. Those words now felt like chains, binding him to memories he had long since buried under layers of ambition and achievement. Imperfect reflections of his accomplishments danced in his mind. He envisioned board meetings filled with sharp-suited executives, their faces a blur of goals and graphs, all rooted in the pursuit of profit. Yet the sight of his grandmother's bracelet brought a disquieting clarity into focus, a stark contrast to the glossy world of tech domination. He wondered if the accolades still meant anything if he deprived himself of the very essence of who he was: a family member, a brother, a son. With a deep breath, David descended the attic stairs. The clatter of his footsteps echoed in the stillness of the house, a reminder that he was approaching unfamiliar territory. Each step felt like moving against a current, one that tried to drag him back into the world of corporate metrics and investor reports. But there was something greater at stake now, a battle within himself that demanded resolution. He picked up his phone and hesitated, thoughts swirling. Reaching out to his brother felt monumental, not just because of their fractured relationship, but because it was a return to vulnerability he had long avoided. What if the call exposed not only his failings as a brother, but his insatiable desire for validation that overshadowed all else? Would he be met with cold silence, or had the passage of time allowed for a shred of forgiveness? Ultimately, David dialed the number, each ringing tone drumming up an anxiety he hadn't felt in years. Would Eric even pick up? As he waited, memories of them as children flooded back. Summer days spent playing in the yard, competing over who could climb higher on the swings. Timid laughter against the backdrop of budding dreams that hadn't yet been scarred by adulthood. With a click, the call connected. "Eric," he began, his voice cracking slightly. "It's David." "Yeah, I know," Eric responded, the coldness palpable even over the line. There was a long pause, heavy with the weight of unspoken words. "What do you want?" I want to talk. About us." "For what?" "To relive childhood memories, while I struggle to pay my bills." The bitterness hit like a punch to the gut. David felt the sting of anger mix with guilt but pushed through. "I've been selfish," he managed, sincerity lacing his tone. "I've spent so much time chasing success that I lost sight of what is important. I want to do better." A silence fell between them, stretching uncomfortably. David could almost hear the gears turning in Eric's head, the possibility of acceptance battling with entrenched resentment. Would he brush this off, or was his brother ready to take a step towards reconciliation? "I don't know if I can forgive you," Eric finally said, the vulnerability liberating yet frightening. "I don't expect you to," David replied, realizing with agony that this was only the beginning, an acknowledgement of their pain, layered under years of neglect. As their conversation unfolded, David felt growth emerging amidst the tension. He began to share his aspirations and fears, and for the first time in years, he uncovered hidden truths about himself. With every exchange, the gap between his past and present began to narrow, exposing the potential for a new connection forged not through wealth, but through understanding and acceptance. After hanging up, David felt the pressure inside him release slightly. He had taken the first step, but the path ahead remained uncertain. Questions continued to haunt him. What if reconciliation inevitably led him back into the family's emotional chaos? What if his mentor's imminent betrayal would thwart his attempts to reconnect? Yet, rather than being deterred, each query stoked a fire for change within him. He could no longer default to power as a shield. It was time to confront the truths he had long avoided. He knew the real challenge lay ahead, one where this newfound determination would be tested against the very essence of who he had become. As night fell, David stared out at the rain-slicked streets, resolving to confront those swirling uncertainties. The storm outside mimicked the tempest within him, but the realization hit him with acute clarity: he had the power to change the narrative. Would he embrace the familial connections he had neglected, or retreat again into the comfortable shadows of his empire? The moment of truth was rapidly approaching as David realized the depth of his journey ahead, one that promised growth, but was also fraught with potential setbacks. He felt the weight of commitment pulling him deeper into the fray, triggering a distinct realization. It was not merely about bridging connections, but understanding the complexity of forgiveness and the courage it demanded. How far was he willing to go? In the silence that followed, as he replayed the conversation in his mind, a single thought gripped him. The time had come to face not just his family, but the life choices that ultimately shaped who he was meant to be. David spent the next few days teetering on the precipice of change, his internal landscape a tumultuous mix of hope and fear. The conversation with Eric resonated in his mind, replaying like a haunting melody that both comforted and disturbed him. Every moment felt charged with potential and opportunity to reshape his reality, but what if he stumbled? The feeling of inadequacy gnawed at him. Was he truly capable of fixing what had been broken? Each morning brought with it the weight of expectation, both from himself and the specters of his past. He fought to focus on his work, but found that the allure of the corporate ladder had lost its shine. The drive for professional success felt hollow in the face of unfinished familial connections. On one particularly draining afternoon, he decided to clear his mind with a routine run. The rhythmic cadence of his feet on the pavement provided an outlet for his swirling thoughts. As the wind whipped against him, he became acutely aware of how disconnected he felt from his own body, just as removed as he had been from his family. It hit him. Every promotion, every deal sealed with a firm handshake, hadn't filled the void of his brother's absence. With every mile he covered, he pondered what it would mean to reconnect, to redefine success not in accolades but in relationships. After cooling down, he paused at the edge of a local park, where children played freely, parents engaged in whispered conversations, and laughter echoed like an antidote to his self-imposed isolation. He watched a father encourage his son to ride a bike for the first time, a mix of fear and exhilaration on the child's face, mirroring his own insecurities about reaching out to Eric. A few joggers passed by, nodding in silent acknowledgement. In that moment, he wondered if he was more alone than he cared to admit. This feeling ignited a spark within him, and perhaps his next step could be dismantling the wall he had built around himself. Fueled by newfound determination, he headed home to compose another message for his brother, one that bore his vulnerabilities. He drafted and erased lines, second-guessing his every word. It was important to break through the mistrust, yet he struggled to convey sincerity without sounding desperate. More than once, he wanted to keep himself guarded, but that's not what he wanted anymore. "Eric, I know it's been a while. I want to hear about your life, not from a distance but directly from you. No obligations. Just two brothers talking." Sending the message was an act of defiance against years of pride and separation. He hit send, feeling the sting of jitters wash over him. Moments later, the silence pressed down, amplifying his doubts. What if this would end in disappointment? What if Eric dismissed his efforts completely? But instead of succumbing to panic, David suspended those fears momentarily. He paced the living room, hands tucked in pockets, breathing deeply as he reminded himself of why he was doing this. The idea of reconnecting with family left him vulnerable, but was also a significant part of reclaiming who he was. Days passed with no reply. The sting of rejection morphed into a different ache and understanding that reconnecting wouldn't be an instantaneous remedy. As daylight broke on the fourth day, David was jolted from sleep by a ping from his phone. With fingers trembling, he opened the message. "I didn't think you'd reach out again. How do we start?" A cascading rush of emotions flooded him. Relief spiraled into renewed anxiety. This was not just dialogue. This was a commitment to understanding, to grapple with the complex bonds of family that were stitched together with both love and tension. David knew that this was more than just wanting to reconnect. It was about weaving together the threads of his past with his aspirations for the future. Each message, each word exchanged would be a step closer towards facing the complex dynamics he had long evaded. He took a deep breath, feeling both weighed down and uplifted. The challenge and potential of their reconnection glimmered before him, echoing the need to address the deeper social dynamics within his family. But lingering questions gnawed at him. What truths would emerge when they confronted their shared history? Would they unwittingly unravel the past, or would they discover healing buried beneath the resentment? As he sat, heart racing and hopeful, he resolved that the next step was critical. The journey was no longer solely about mending the relationships of his past, but confronting the truths that had long haunted him. But was he prepared to face what lay ahead, knowing that the path with Eric promised uncomfortable revelations and challenging conversations? The moment of realization drew near. Would he allow himself to unravel? Could he emerge transformed? David's heart thudded in anticipation of what was to come, torn between dread and determination. The answers awaited, but the real question remained: how much of his past was he willing to confront? David stared at his phone, the message from Eric glowing on the screen like a beacon. The phrase "how do we start?" hung in the air, heavy with possibility, and laden with everything they had not said over the years. He took a long moment to absorb that simplest of queries, knowing the implications of a fragmented relationship and the courage it took to bridge the gap. His apprehension simmered beneath the surface. How could he ensure this dialogue wouldn't devolve into old grievances? What if their shared history unleashed a torrent of emotions best left buried? As he wrestled with these thoughts, his fingers trembled slightly over the keyboard, the weight of his intent palpable. "Maybe we could just talk?" he typed, adjusting to the immediacy of Eric's reply. "I'd like to hear about your life since we last spoke." Just start there. Pushing the send button, a mix of dread and daring swept through him. There was no turning back. The commitment to open the floodgates of communication felt monumental, yet every fiber of his being urged him to press on. He resolved not to neglect the opportunity handed to him, knowing the risk of unraveling would yield either discord or reconciliation. The subsequent hours were a slow tide. He engaged in mundane tasks at work, each distraction seeming futile against the magnetic pull of his phone. There was a sense of anticipation building inside, a tension as palpable as the quiet hum of the city outside. Would Eric reply? Did he share even a fraction of David's desire to understand their fractured past? A ping shattered the near silence. He dropped everything, barely able to breathe as he opened the message. "Okay, I can do that. It's been hard since the last time we spoke. You know Mom's been pushing for us to connect, but I wasn't sure how." The vulnerability in Eric's words struck a chord. David could feel the emotional undertow beneath that statement, a shared sense of familial responsibility, burdened by unaddressed issues. It was clear that Eric was as uncertain as he was, but that also spoke volumes about the effort required to mend their bond. "Hard for both of us, I imagine," he replied, quick to show understanding. "Maybe we can start with what's new. How is your family?" The conversation shifted into an exchange of life updates, small anecdotes that felt like light threads spun into a fragile tapestry. They talked about Eric's children, stories filled with laughter, and quirks that bridged the years gone by. Every shared detail felt like a small victory against their long-standing silence. Yet, as the question circled, David felt the gnaw of deeper issues lurking just beneath the surface. What about their parents? What about the emotional wounds that had festered for too long? A sense of inadequacy made him hesitate. Was he really equipped to steer the conversation toward these vulnerable topics without unraveling everything? With each exchange, he reminded himself that this wasn't just about small talk. It was essential he navigate the impending confrontation with sensitivity. He had to muster the courage to plunge deeper into the complexities, even if it meant facing the uncomfortable truths. "Listen, I know we're dancing around some heavy stuff. I've been thinking a lot about our childhood, and how we drifted apart. It feels like there's so much more we need to talk about," David typed, his heart racing. The response was swift, but David felt the weight of impending tension seep through the backlit screen. "I thought about that too. I think it's time we faced it. But I don't know if we can do this just through messages. Maybe it's time we meet." The proposition hung in the air, both daunting and exhilarating. Every impulse screamed for him to retreat, to remain safe behind the barrier of texts. Yet he knew there was no real progress without confronting the reality of physical presence, the weight of face-to-face dialogue that carried with it empathy and nuance. David inhaled deeply, bracing for the leap that lay ahead. This meeting would demand every ounce of courage he had, but also promised the potential for transformation. He felt that familiar pulse of anticipation and invitation to embark on a journey steeped in revelation. "Okay. When and where?" he typed back, his fingers steadying with newfound resolve. As he awaited a reply, doubt swirled alongside hope. The confrontation was inevitable, but it sparked a question deep within him. Was he truly prepared to face the past? The stirring possibility of healing loomed before him, tantalizing in its immediacy. The moment of truth approached, and he felt the ground shift beneath him. Would he walk into this meeting stronger, or would he find himself staggering under the emotional load? As he contemplated their eventual encounter, David knew the next chapter of his journey hinged on what Eric would reveal. David's phone buzzed again, pulling him from the spiral of his own thoughts. It was Eric, and the words scrolled across the screen like a ticking clock. "Let's meet Friday at the cafe near the old park. 2 o'clock sound good?" He considered the choice. The cafe was familiar, a spot where they had shared countless meals growing up. Would this place evoke nostalgia, or just serve as a reminder of their distance? However trivial it seemed, the location held power. It was a blank slate where old memories could mingle with new possibilities. "Sounds good," David typed back, his heart racing. He felt a swell of emotions rushing to the surface. Today was Monday. The wait felt interminable. He craved clarity, yet the thought of rehashing buried feelings terrified him. But wasn't confronting the past necessary for growth? The question circled round and round in his mind. As the week dragged on, David found himself replaying every moment of his life with Eric. The joy of their childhood adventures flashed through his mind, contrasting sharply with the silence that had followed. It made him question his own role in their estrangement. Had he done enough back then to remain close? On Thursday night, as he prepared for their meeting, David felt the weight of all he wanted to express. He dug through old photo albums, half embarrassed by the feelings rising within. In one image, the brothers were seen laughing, undeniably close. His heart ached to reclaim even a sliver of that connection. He picked up a pen and journal, attempting to write down his thoughts to clarify his mind, yet the words failed to capture the tumult within. As Friday arrived, David felt a storm of apprehension and hope. He arrived early, choosing a seat in the corner, his fingers tapping nervously against the old wooden table. The air buzzed with chatter, but he felt isolated, a world apart from the life around him. Time crawled until 2 o'clock finally approached, and he felt his heart rate quicken with anticipation. Eric arrived, slightly out of breath, and David noticed the dark circles under his brother's eyes. Instantly, the sight flooded him with empathy. Eric was carrying burdens of his own, perhaps mirrored reflections of David's hidden struggles. "Hey," Eric said, the tentative smile breaking through a multitude of emotions. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course," David replied, forcing a smile as he gestured for Eric to sit. The moment felt like standing on the precipice of a canyon, each brother preparing to leap into the vast unknown together. They began with small talk, discussing the cafe's menu and their favorite childhood games, yet it quickly settled back into silence. The shadows of their shared past lingered palpably between them. David knew it was time to dive deeper, the lingering doubts still gripping his heart. "I'm glad we're here," he finally said, summoning courage. "But we have to talk about us, about everything that happened. I think it's time to stop avoiding it. A flicker of apprehension crossed Eric's face, but he nodded. Yeah, we have been avoiding it. Maybe if we're honest with each other, we can start to heal. David leaned in, eager to connect. I've been thinking a lot about childhood, the way things changed between us when everything else fell apart. There is so much I never said that has been eating at me. Maybe for you too? Eric hesitated, and David noticed the change in his demeanor. The tension thickened, the cafes seemed to fade away as their conversation deepened. A small bead of sweat trickled down David's back. Could they really face this together? Just as the silence peaked, Eric spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. You don't know how hard this has been for me, David. I lost something back then, something that has never come back, our bond. Those words resonated within David, yet something inside him stirred. Was this just another cycle of pain, or an opportunity to rebuild something precious? He felt an urgency rising, a need to understand not just what had been lost but how they could fortify their future. But even as they began to confront the past, David couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest revelations were yet to come. The motion of his phone vibrating against the table caught his attention again. A message illuminated the screen, and this time, the unsettling weight of it sent a chill through him. What if he wasn't ready for what he was about to discover? As he glanced at the text, an unsettled question loomed in his mind. Who would emerge from this conversation, two broken brothers seeking solace, or two estranged souls wrestling with the shadows of their past? As the message lingered on the screen, David felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. Steeling himself, he clicked on the notification. It was from their mother, a simple text with a reminder about the upcoming family gathering, the very gathering they had both avoided in countless ways. It felt like a moment of reckless fate. The thought of family ignited warmth, but also summoned deep-seated fears. He resumed his gaze on Eric, who was now staring at his hands, lost in thought. Could this meeting truly lead to the restoration of their relationship, or was it merely a preamble to more heartache? David? Eric's voice broke through the silence, trembling slightly. What if I told you I have something to say, that I've never had the courage to express, something that could change everything? David's curiosity piqued, but alongside it surged an undercurrent of dread. What do you mean? Eric hesitated, gnawing at his lip, clearly battling guilt or fear. Remember the summer after college? When I left. I didn't just distance myself because of the family issues or my struggles. I was dealing with something tough, a secret. I thought I was protecting you from it. A rush of adrenaline coursed through David. Could it be? Had their fracture stemmed from something Eric had buried all along? What are you talking about? I made a choice, David. I chose to walk away instead of confronting the pain, Eric admitted, his voice increasingly edged. I kept everything bottled up, thinking you'd be better off without the burden of it. But in doing so, I dragged us both down. The revelation struck David like a tidal wave, spiraling him back into memories he thought had been sealed. You mean you didn't think I could handle it? What if you believed I could have helped you? Anger dripped into his voice, tempered with concern. Eric sighed, his eyes hollowed, yet shining with unshed tears. I know that now. I can't change the past, but I want to face it. I want to own up to my decisions. They shaped not just my life but ours. The cafe buzzed around them, but David felt suspended in time, navigating the tumult within. A flicker of hope sparked inside, radiating warmth through the frigid air between them. He understood then that this wasn't just about Eric's struggles. It was also a shared moment of vigilance against their own vulnerability. What do you want from me? David asked softly, conflicted but curious. I want forgiveness, Eric murmured, swallowing hard. But more than that, I want to rebuild our relationship from an honest place. I need you to know why I've been distant, And you have to be open about how it affected you. That's the only way we can start anew. The idea of forgiveness felt monumental. David would have to peel back layers of festering resentment, but could he truly let go of his hurt? Trust, once shattered, didn't he return easily? And then he remembered the family gathering mentioned in the text. What if we began showing up for each other starting with that event? I mean, we can't solve everything, but we can start healing together, step by step. Eric nodded slowly, the tension easing ever so slightly around his shoulders. I'd like that. We need to face everything, both the good and the bad, and start mending those broken threads. As hope flickered dimly between them, David's phone vibrated again. He glanced down, seeing another message from his mother, this one hinting at a possible reunion of hearts, the very idea that had sent him spiraling just moments ago. Now, however, as he met Eric's eyes, they dared to make a pact for the future. As Eric leaned forward, words unbidden on his lips, David felt a mix of apprehension and anticipation. They were standing on the cusp of navigating a treacherous but vital journey. He sensed that the next step would reveal something monumental, something pivotal that could either fracture them again or fortify their newfound resolve. David, there is something else I need to unveil about that summer, something I've kept even deeper than my own insecurities. And it might be what is keeping us both from truly healing. The weight of those words held them both captive, firmly anchoring the moment. What deeper truths lay ahead that could alter the course of their relationship further? A fissure in the past was about to be unearthed, and its implications seemed far-reaching, potentially life-changing. David could feel the gravity of Eric's words, like a storm gathering on the horizon. The shadows of his brother's past loomed large, and the thought of what lay behind those unspoken truths struck at the core of his apprehension. In that quiet cafe, a world imbued with the scent of coffee and hushed conversations, time seemed to pause, suspending them in an unresolved moment. What do you mean, deeper than your insecurities? David prompted, his voice a mix of encouragement and fear. He needed this revelation, yet he dreaded what it could bring. The haunting silence that followed felt oppressive, as though they were both holding their breath. Eric's fingers clenched around his coffee cup, his knuckles pale. When I left, it wasn't just about escaping the family dynamics. It was connected to my identity, the struggles I faced in accepting who I was. I thought distancing myself would spare you from my battles. The admission pulled David into a whirlwind of emotions, fear and concern vying for dominance. Were you hiding something? Something I needed to know? He pictured the boy who had once been afraid to share his dreams and desires, now transformed into a man seemingly riddled with secrets. Yes, Eric said, his voice low. I was grappling with my sexuality, and as hard as it was for me, I feared what it would do to you and the family. I thought leaving was the best solution, a way to protect you. Instead, it only amplified our rift. The magnitude of Eric's confession washed over David like cold water. This was a truth they had never traversed, a damning element of misunderstanding that had shifted the foundation of their brotherhood. He fought to maintain his composure, resisting the urge to retreat into fury. What I can't understand, David said, voice measured, is how you could think leaving was the right choice. Did you really think I would turn away from you? I didn't know how you would react, David. Society had taught me to fear rejection. I took the cowardice path. I thought silence would protect us both. Eric's face fell, regret thick in the corners of his eyes. The depth of Eric's struggle resonated painfully within David. Behind the anger and resentment, a sense of empathy burgeoned. But what being silent did was deepen the pain we both felt. We craved communication, but instead, we chose avoidance. The realization hit David hard. They had both been stumbling through life, each trying to bear burdens alone when the other could have shared the weight. David's own path had recently veered into uncharted waters professionally, a venture that demanded a seemingly insurmountable level of vulnerability. He had spent years in the shadow of success, always looking over his shoulder, as he stood on the precipice of career advancement, yet never feeling fully grounded, coiled with the fear of failure. With Eric's admission came an impulse to confront his own silence, his own insecurities. They were mirrors reflecting each other as scars. "Let us stop hiding, Eric. Let us be honest about everything," David urged, feeling the pressure of his words, laden with intent. "If we're going to meet our family, we must break our silences now. Let us start with this together." Eric's eyes widened slightly, a spark of hope igniting in the midst of all they had buried. "You mean it? You're willing to tackle this? Nothing is more important than authentic connections. If our past has built this wall, then we're responsible for tearing it down. Together." As the words left his lips, David felt emboldened, the faint echo of his unresolved fears beginning to dissolve. But even as he stared into his brother's eyes, the weight of an impending family gathering loomed like a specter. Eric needed to comprehend fully the extent of his own journey, as did David. They were preparing to peel back layers not just of their relationship, but also of their individual identities. "What is the first step?" Eric asked, the slight tremor in his voice replaced by a note of resolve. "I think we need to prepare ourselves. Understand that vulnerability is not weakness. It opens the door. We need to learn to accept these truths that have shaped us, yours, mine, our family's." As they sat united in purpose, the cafe around them became a blur, their bond crystallizing amidst the clatter of cups. David's mind raced forward, plotting the course of personal accountability he would have to navigate, both within himself and with those he had deemed supportive yet distant. "Are you ready for this?" David challenged, the uncharted territory of vulnerability palpable between them. Eric hesitated for a moment before nodding, the intensity of the moment evident in his gaze. "Yes, but I want to know one thing first. The truth that is deeper than all of this." David's heart raced. "What truth? Why did you never confront me? What was holding you back?" David's breath caught as he grappled with his own unspoken confessions. The walls he had carefully constructed seemed to threaten collision, setting the stage for a revelation that could turn everything inside out. A pause stretched between them, suffused with anticipation. Would he now step forward into a new understanding, or retreat into silence once again? The pressure built, the air thick with unvoiced thoughts, and David braced himself for the confrontation not only with Eric, but with the very essence of who he had become. He knew that the next words would shape everything. The journey into self-discovery had never felt so urgent, so potent. The moment hung in the balance, pregnant with possibilities yet fraught with risks. What truth would emerge, and could it truly forge a path to healing? David felt the weight of Eric's question pressing against his chest like a vice. The shadows of unspoken truths loomed larger, demanding to be addressed. This was a moment designed for vulnerability, for honesty, but a fear deep within him resisted that impulse. He could feel a flood of memories and emotions swirl, the years of silence and avoidance clashing violently against a new, burgeoning desire for connection. "Why did I never confront you?" he echoed, the question hanging heavily in the air. As he considered his answer, his mind raced through childhood memories, through moments he had tucked away like artifacts in an unvisited museum. The laughter of shared play, the bittersweet tones of family gatherings, even the strained conversations that hinted at deeper conflicts, the image warped and blurred, all leading to this moment. David took a deep breath, grappling with the raw honesty he was about to reveal. "I was protecting myself, Eric. I thought maintaining the status quo would spare us both pain. I kept the truth bottled up, fearing it would explode and destroy everything." It was cowardice dressed as caution. A flicker of understanding passed through Eric's eyes. "But that only deepened our distance. We both suffered in silence. I thought by leaving, I was saving you, but here we are, still entangled in the past. David nodded. Fear creates a chasm, doesn't it? I thought by staying quiet about my concerns, I was shielding you. But that silence made our issues fester. I had to pretend I was unbothered, that your absence didn't offend me. The words tasted bitter, as they left his lips full of an uncomfortable truth that had gone unspoken for far too long. In that moment, he recognized the cyclical nature of their pain, mirrored through years of avoidance. His determination to break the cycle solidified with every passing second. I've been afraid of losing what little connection we have left, David continued, his tone steadying. But if we're going to be real with each other, I need to confront my fears of failure, my fears of being unworthy. And that means facing the discomfort you represent. Eric leaned in, the intensity of his gaze urging David to excavate deeper truths. What do you see when you look at me? David hesitated, envisioning the brother he had both admired and resented. I see a man who was swallowed by his own struggles, but also one who possesses the strength to confront them. I see part of my journey reflected in yours. I'm tired of feeling like I have to carry my burdens alone. The connection between them began to feel palpable, as if the air had been charged with a new energy, one that whispered of possibilities and reconciliation, yet still trembled with unpolished wounds. Let us break these patterns, Eric suggested, his eyes steady. Let us start working on our truths, step by step. David felt a sense of urgency to not only honor his brother's willingness to embrace honesty, but to also confront the next chapter of his own life. He had seen an opportunity for growth, not just within their relationship, but in the framework of his professional aspirations, which had kept him standing on the periphery of his dreams for far too long. I want to do that, David said, his chest filling with resolve. It's time to apply the same courage we're asking each other to embrace. We can't afford to lose this moment. As they began outlining a plan for their confrontation drawing on vulnerability, acceptance, and honesty, David felt the weight shift slightly. It was a fragile step, a hesitant pivot toward dismantling the walls that had kept them apart. But as each layer began to unravel, mild trepidation hovered. What he didn't yet realize was that the scars they were now exposing were not just remnants of pain. They were markers of strength. Both brothers stood on the precipice of reclaiming their identities. But as the reality of their family gathering loomed closer, David could not shake the feeling of impending storm clouds. His success in navigating this emotional labyrinth depended not just on confronting Eric but also on unearthing the personal demons that had brewed beneath the surface. The journey had transformed from a collaborative healing to a deeply personal reckoning. Can we truly prepare for what is waiting? David asked, that familiar doubt creeping into his voice. What if this reveal brings more pain than healing? In that case, Eric replied softly, we face it together. We've already chosen honesty. We owe it to ourselves to see it through. As David met his brother's gaze, an understanding blossomed. There was strength in vulnerability. They would confront their truths together, but the journey was fraught with uncertainty, and the true test loomed ahead in the form of their family gathering. And just as that thought settled in, a sudden realization sparked within David. I have to contact Mom and Dad first. There is something I need to communicate before we walk into that event. The anticipation quickened. What awaited them on the other side of their revelations remained shrouded in mystery. In that moment, the gravity of the choice weighed heavily upon him. Could David find the courage to step into the chaos, or would fear send him retreating once again? David steadied himself as he pulled out his phone, the earlier resolve beginning to waver. Each ring felt like a countdown, a signal of approaching judgment. Would his parents be receptive to the truth he intended to share? He had spent years repressing the darker aspects of his family dynamics, and now he faced the possibility of unearthing them. Are you ready for this? Eric asked, breaking the fixed silence. David swallowed hard. I don't know if anyone can ever be ready for something like this, but it needs to happen. As the call connected, the sound of his mother's voice pierced through the air, a blend of warmth and uncertainty. "David? Is everything okay?" "Yeah, Mom, everything's fine." His voice felt unsteady, betraying the facade. "There is something important I need to talk to you and Dad about." "You know we're here for you, sweetheart," she reassured him, her tone a soft blanket that momentarily eased his nerves. What if the truth overwhelmed rather than reinforced their bond? He could sense Eric's anxious presence beside him, a silent yet powerful reminder of the support available to him. But this was different. This was family. "I think it's time we talk about what happened," he began, crafting his words with care. "About Eric and everything we've been keeping inside for so long." Silence followed, stretching out like a taut string ready to snap. "David," his father's voice finally broke through, tinged with cautious concern, "what do you mean by everything?" "About our struggles, the distance, the avoidance," he pressed forward, anxiety pouring from his throat. "I don't want to pretend anymore, and I think it's essential we're honest with each other. I believe addressing the past can help us chart a better future." A wave of heavy silence enveloped them again, thickening the air. David could almost sense the deep breaths being taken on the other end, the hesitation of grappling with truths long buried. "Your mother and I," his father began, slow and deliberate, "we thought we were helping by letting things go unsaid. We wanted to give you both space to breathe. But perhaps we were wrong." David's heart raced as he processed his father's admission, a crack in the carefully constructed facade. Perhaps this was the sign he needed, a mutual acknowledgement of their shared burden. "It doesn't have to be this way anymore," he asserted, a sense of empowerment surging through him. "Let us start fresh. I want to hear your truths, and I want to share mine." The dialogue broke a threshold. The fear that initially gripped him began to loosen. Even if nobody knew what to say initially, he sensed they were all willing to meet this moment together. After the call ended, David felt both emboldened and terrified. What if they struggled with the conversation? He shared with Eric, who responded with a firm nod. "Then we help them through it," Eric said. "We're ready." David felt a sharp rise in optimism. This was perhaps the first real decision he'd made, the first time he'd taken control, not just of his relationship with Eric, but also the family narrative. Now he turned to Eric, enriched with a fresh perspective, driven by the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I'm noticing something in myself that I hadn't before. I want to confront these challenges diving in headfirst instead of tiptoeing around them. It feels liberating. Embrace that feeling. Hold on to it." Eric smiled, and at that moment, it was clear this path was less about erasing the past and more about reclaiming it. "Let us plan what we're going to say when we meet our family face to face. We can't rely solely on the phone." Words flowed easily now, transforming trepidation into strategy. "We'll set ground rules for each other: honesty, respect, understanding." The palpable tension that had gripped their previous exchanges began to morph. They could still falter, but David felt assured they were better equipped to manage whatever fallout awaited. Just as hope surged to the forefront, a latent fear whispered loudly, tarnishing the potential relief. He realized that they weren't just navigating a conversation, they were risking everything. What if the very act of exposure fractured them more deeply? "Are you sure we're prepared for this?" he murmured, a shadow casting doubt on his excitement that loomed ever nearer. Eric's expression hardened, determination shining through. "We start by being honest with ourselves. This duel with our past has a purpose, David. It's not just about healing, it's about growth." With adrenaline blurring the lines between fear and exhilaration, David clenched his jaw, willingly stepping toward uncertainty. All paths led back to confronting both the family he had known and the man he needed to become. As they settled into the plan, another unease settled in. Could reclaiming a legacy of silence lead to a breakthrough, or would it unleash an avalanche of pain? With that in mind, David realized the stakes had significantly risen. It was now or never an imminent confrontation with both the past and its possible consequences awaited, and he would need to find the strength within. The next chapter would demand everything of him, but there was no turning back now. In one last shuddering breath, he acknowledged a truth that struck him as solid as a lightning bolt. The moment to face their demons had dawned, and with it came the unquenchable question, who would emerge from the storm? David Malone stood at the threshold of his childhood home once more, the very place where his relentless ambition had begun to overshadow the essence of who he was. But now, with the delicate bracelet clasped tightly in his hand, he understood the significance of family, connection, and confronting the truths they had all along avoided. The weight felt different this time. What had once burdened him now felt invigorating, a clear path toward understanding and vulnerability. After the transformative meeting with Eric, his brother, David had made a concrete decision that shifted the trajectory of his existence. The call to their parents had been a catalyst, propelling them all into the realm of honesty, a territory that had remained untouched for far too long. The act of sharing their struggles had forged an unexpected connection, breaking old patterns that had kept them trapped in silence. David felt an emerging confidence onward. Together they had unearthed the past to pave a fresh future. As the days merged into weeks, David took the initiative to foster his family's newfound communication. He organized regular family dinners that gradually morphed from awkwardness to warmth as laughter filled the air once again. It was fulfilling to witness connection restoring his family's dynamics, each meal dinner adding layers of understanding as they savored both food and shared stories. The once modal silence now echoed with recognition and acceptance. Through all this, David found himself embracing vulnerability, realizing that authentic relationships took precedence over professional accolades. His unwavering drive for business success began to shift upon reclaiming the strength in familial bonds. He left the rigid corporate ladder behind, opting to invest time in nurturing relationships. Now, it didn't feel like a sacrifice. It felt like reclaiming the fragments of himself he thought had long disappeared. In the weeks following, he reached out to fallen comrades and aspiring entrepreneurs from his early career. The importance of mentorship crystallized when David recognized that success was not always defined by finances, but intertwined with the lives he could uplift. Stepping away from a stark corporate setting, he created a community-focused incubator that fostered emerging entrepreneurs, providing them with resources, guidance, and connections. The ravenous ambitions that had once driven him solely for profit now aligned with nurturing futures, amplifying success in a more holistic manner. Each entrepreneur flourished in their own right, echoing the sentiments of encouragement and familial support he had longed for in his own life. Validation seeped in as David received accolades not for wealth accrued, but for the lives he impacted. He was awarded the Innovator's Medal by a non-profit organization for his groundbreaking work. Yet amid the applause, the resonance of the bracelet's engraving lingered, reminding him of what truly mattered, honoring his family, and the path that led him to understand the essence of success beyond monetary terms. David could now sit back and breathe in the triumph, feeling solid assurance that he was not just a man garbed in professional accolades, but a brother, a son, and a friend who had faced the storm and emerged transformed. He no longer needed the hollow echoes of corporate success to define him. He had dismantled that facade and built an enduring legacy anchored in authenticity. As he watched the sunset paint the sky beyond his family's dinner table, a profound sense of fulfillment washed over him. It wasn't merely about reconciling the past, he had embraced a future built on lessons learned. He understood now that true success was not an isolated applause, but a resounding chorus of connection. And within that realization, David would emerge stronger and aware. The stakes may have seemed insurmountable, but he had not only confronted his fears, he had grown through them. He had achieved what his heart truly yearned for all along, an enduring family bond crowned by respect, growth, and unconditional love. Now, dear reader, if you've resonated with David's journey of transformation, this is the moment to dive deeper into more emotional stories that push the boundaries of personal growth. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you further. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm that brings authentic narratives to life. You need to show your support. Comment below your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. Your voice matters. And lastly, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this remarkable transformation. You have the power to uplift others. Let your voice echo in this incredible journey of life.